Hello everyone, it is me, AJ Games. Today I am reading a My Hero Academia Podfic. It is a one-shot called You're Expelled by Gfan97 on AO3. Summary. Sorry. After the quirk assessment test, Izuku Midoriya was expelled from UA. After this, he takes the only logical course of action. Attend UA anyway, and hide from Eraserhead like his life depended on it, which it might. Meanwhile, the rest of UA needs to decide out what to do with this reverse truancy. I think that's how you pronounce it. You're expelled. Those words played in Izuku's head over and over again. After Aizawa-sensei, Eraserhead, said that to him, Izuku went back to the changing room and got back into his school uniform. He had nothing else to change into. Once in the hall, just stood there until the bell rang. When it did, the students flooded the hallways, destroying his privacy. Izuku went into the classroom and sat through class on autopilot. He'd done it plenty of times before UA. He did the same for the next class and the next, which brought him to where he currently was. He glanced up and saw yet another teacher give him a strange look. Was he muttering again? No, nobody said anything. Sure, the teachers and the other students had been giving him weird looks, but nobody ever said quit before. Besides, but had everybody stayed quiet before? But nobody had ever stayed quiet before. There we go. Besides, they were probably staring because he was the one student who managed to get expelled on the first day. Wait. He had gotten expelled, and he was still here, in class. What? Why hadn't anyone told him? I mean, sure, he shouldn't need to be told that he'd been expelled after Eraserhead said it to his face, but still, why hadn't the teachers said anything? Hadn't they know? It couldn't have been silent. They kept giving him strange looks. Now what? This was the last period, and it wasn't like he could keep attending his classes as long as Eraserhead didn't catch him. Could he? None of his classmates said anything, not even Kachan. None of his teachers had said anything. He couldn't avoid his homeroom teacher all year. He wasn't even enrolled anymore. But it would take a while to get a new school, and UA had one of the best curriculums in the country. Maybe he could get a head start while looking for a new school. But what about his mom? What would she think? Maybe he shouldn't tell his mom just yet. Not until he found another school after all. She'd be less worried if he already had his situation lined up, right? He showed up to school the next day after homeroom. He hadn't been sure if his pass still worked, so he snuck in his way in. No security confronted him. His teachers each gave him a confused look, but shrugged and kept teaching. His classmates only occasionally threw him confused glances. By lunch, nobody had directly questioned him about it. Maybe this could work after all. Teacher's lounge. So, how does it feel to have only, 19 students now? A massive headache. They're loud, rambunctious, and irritable. So, teenagers, whatever. Hey, Shota, you going to have one of your power naps in your office, or would you like to have lunch with me and Hazashi and talk about everything that's happened since last school year ended? Shota had a brief look of fear before quickly glancing at his sleeping bag and juice box. I'm going to be in my office. Feel free to leave me alone. Hazashi watched him leave, winced, and then chuckled outside to make sure he wasn't coming back. Checked outside to make sure he wasn't coming back. He glanced back to Namuri, who seemed to be checking if Shota had left anything behind. She nodded at Hazashi. So, are we going to talk about the green-haired kid? Across the room, all the other teachers, Sam's All Might, who was absent, nodded. He showed up again today. Does Shota seriously not know what he's doing? What should we do? I say let him stay. I like his spirit. But we can't just let him wander around. We can't just let him wander around campus unchecked, Cementos said. He's not wandering. He's staying in his class, Snipe said. But we still can't grade him, Cementos said. Cementos. I say we keep quiet. I want to see if Shota ever finds him out, Namuri said with a grin. If Shota re-enrolls him, it would be like nothing ever happened, said Ectoplasm. Not if Shota catches him first. Now, everyone, I think there's an easy solution. Nezu said as he walked up and stood on the table. And what's that? Hound Dog asked. A prank! Let's see how long Midoriya can go without Shota finding out he's here. Has Shota tried to re-enroll him? Said Power Loader. Not that I'm aware of, but he only would have expelled Midoriya if he felt like he had no potential as a hero. If Midoriya lasts long enough, Shota will have seen that he has potential and let him in, especially if he does well in his classes, or will take him. Ken nodded. Even if for some reason that couldn't work, this would be an excellent grounds for a glowing recommendation to one of the many hero schools who want to snatch up Shota's expellees the moment they start applying something about stealth, skill, and deduction, Nezu said. Sounds fun, one of the teachers said. Can we make bets on how long it's gonna last? Another said. Will any of you try to sabotage Midoriya for the sake of winning the bet? Nezu said, looking around. They all shook their heads. The kid's too nice to do that to him. Helping him first, win the bet later. Nezu nodded. Good, then betting will be allowed. And if for some reason you tempered cheating, remember, he said, smile, I will find out, and I will enjoy my vengeance on you greatly. Hisashi gulped at whatever Nezu had on mind. Nobody dared try to sabotage Midoriya now. After a long silence, Snipe said, I bet 100 he lasts more than 2 days. Snipe, I'll raise you to 300 I'll raise you to 3 days for 200. 700, I bet the whole week. But what about the USJ? Eraser will be there, so he couldn't hide. If he misses it, he'll be missing out on an important part of his hero education, asked 13. Simple. I will delay the USJ to the end of the week. First weeks often have chaotic to prone to unexpected issues. After all, we will see if he can last until then. If he doesn't, after all, we will see if he can last until then. If he doesn't last that long, then however, whoever guessed right gets the pot. If he makes it until the end, I'll give you all a big bonus check. Either way, Midoriya will be formally re-enrolled, said Nezu. Can we help him? Of course! The teachers all nodded at that. What if Shota asks to re-enroll him? Then what else can I do but re-enroll him? Will we be telling the boy about our plans to... Will we be telling the boy about our plans to get him re-enrolled by the end of the week, even if he gets caught? If we don't tell him, he'll be constantly worried about getting thrown out, 13 asked. No, Nezu said. I want him to do his best so we'll see how long he can last. After all, I'll give him extra credit to complete any undue worries. It'll be called an extended stealth assignment. Besides, he's the one who decided to keep going to a hero school after being expelled, so he batted eyes, studying, suddenly looking very intimidating. None of you will tell it. Is this understood? A long moment, everyone nodded. Excellent. I will warn All Might not to tell Shota of Midoriya's continued presence here. The rest of you separate the world of other teachers. not here besides Shota. Well, time to see how long we can keep this up. And with that, Nezu walked out the door. All Might. Nezu did remember to tell All Might to keep the knowledge of Midori's attendance from Shota. He forgot to mention that it was going to be a part of an elaborate prank, or that Midori would be re-enrolled within the week. One forgot such minor details while dealing with the stresses of running a school, after all. Meanwhile, at the school luncheon. So, Deku, what are you doing here today? Uraraka asked. Weren't you expelled? Obviously, he's been re-enrolled once I realized its mistake, said Ida. After all, he couldn't stay here without permission. That would be a violation of countless school protection protocols and be completely inhibited both for a student and an upcoming hero. It's just unfortunate he was forced to miss homeroom. Well, should he tell the truth or go along with Ida's idea? That would be lying. He can't lie to his friends, but if he tells the truth, they might report him. But by homeroom tomorrow, it would be obvious that he was still expelled and tried to avoid. Oh no, Eraserhead's here! Izuku dove under the table as Eraserhead walked into the cafeteria. He stayed there until Eraserhead had passed their table, then kept staring at Eraserhead as a preyed animal watches a predator until he left the room. He turned back to Ida and Uraraka. They were staring. Jaws dropped. Uh-oh. You did not, Uraraka said. You snuck in. Izuku looked away, feeling his cheeks warming up. Maybe, but you can't. That's not Midori. I insist you cease this behavior at once. It is inappropriate for a former student to conduct themselves in this way, Uraraka said. Ida said. Uraraka said, what's even your plan? Izuku told him. Ida was honest. Izuku was honest. Ida was honest. This plan could not possibly work. If you're caught, you will have an even darker mark on your record than expulsion. They could send you to jail and force us into the murder of reporting you, or be compliment of you trespassing. Maybe not, Uraraka said, looking thoughtful. I mean, he's been in class right in front of our teachers, and none of them had a problem with it. Even the principal said hi to him by name in the hall on the way here, so he must be fine with it too. And Deku's only doing it to keep from falling behind before moving into a different school. She solemnly turned to Ida. Shouldn't we respect our teacher's decisions and let our friend keep following from, and keep our friend from following behind in his education? But we've very well. I shall respect our teacher's wishes. Good luck in continuing with your education, Midoriya. Izuku smiled. Thanks, guys. It really means a lot to me. Then Eraserhead came back, forcing him to hide under the table again, while his friends froze in what they seemed to think was normal poses. Not that he was one to judge. For the next few days, Izuku would get up, go to UA, attend his classes, talk to his classmates, and avoid Eraserhead like his life depended on it, which it might. Hasn't been easy. Fortunately, Eraserhead didn't seem to. It hadn't been easy for. Fortunately, it had been easy. Fortunately, Eraserhead didn't seem to walk through the halls that often, and this black costume stood out in a sea of beige. Also, fortunately, Izuku's teacher seemed to be on his side. No, All Might said. We will begin the first battle. Young Midoriya, I'll need you to go warn the recovery girl that of a possible incoming patient. I will have your team go once without you. Then you will go. Then again, go once without you. Then again with you at the end. Yes, Sir All Might, Izuku said before running off. After the battle trials ended, All Might expressed hope that he wouldn't accidentally give Eraserhead the record. After the battle trial ended, All Might expressed hope that he wouldn't accidentally give Eraserhead the recordings without Izuku, which apparently he did. What a shame. Something similar happened the next day in English. Jiro whispered something to President Mike while pointing at Izuku. Then President Mike turned to Izuku and said, Midoriya, can you go to the supply closet and search for some extra books? What sort of extra? You'll know them when you see them. Go! Izuku grabbed his notebook and hurried, and he just closed the door when he heard Eraserhead's voice. He stayed absolutely quiet and said nothing. Then he hoped he wouldn't suspect anything. Why are you acting weirder than usual? He was suspecting something. Whatever, I'll be back in my office. I'll be back in my office tapping if you need anything. That was close. Alright, I need to grab some supplies from the closet. You can't do that. You can't do that. Why not? Because we're undersupplied. Mike, I was in there yesterday. We are not. And you don't even know what I wanted. Well, Izuku realized he needed a place to hide. He looked around and saw a place. He had first footsteps. He heard his hiding place The door opened, Eraserhead walked in. Izuku really hoped Eraserhead wouldn't look up. Otherwise, he'd see a former UA student awkwardly wedging himself in between the walls just above the door. Eraserhead grabbed some pencils and began to walk out, his head facing the ground. Keep looking down, keep looking down. He stopped right in front of the notebook that Izuku just realized he dropped. Stop looking down! Eraserhead bent over, grabbed the notebook, picked it up, and walked to the door. And a student left this in there. I'll let you handle it. Izuku heard him walk out the door. After a few minutes, Izuku walked back into the room where Mike gave him a book and with a light chastisement about keeping tracks of things. After that, the most eventful part of the day, well, aside from full-blown panic when the alarms went off, but frankly, getting trampled and stampeded was probably a more pleasant death than getting caught by an Eraserhead another time. Midoriya, what a pleasure to see you, said Principal Nezu, walking up to him. He glanced at the bathroom right next to him. You know, I find it fascinating how patterns progress throughout the years, like students all using the bathroom just after class, which you should do. He glanced at the corner behind him. Right now. Taking the hint, Izuku dashed inside. Just as the door closed, he heard Nezu say, Shota, what a pleasure to see you. Even the students were on his side. Izuku was walking down the hall to lunch before a group of students surrounded him, squeezing between them, blocking him from sight of view. Hello, Aizawa-sensei, one of the opposite side of the hall. What a wonderful day, isn't it? Shota replied to Fu's question with a grunt. On the other side of the hallway, a large group of his former sex years were clumped together tightly, giving him a very wide, very fake smile. He stared at them. They stared at him. Whatever, I'll let their class teachers handle whatever's up to them. I'm busy dealing with the U.S. Whatever, I'll let their class teachers handle whatever they're up to. I'm busy dealing with the USJ trip being delayed and Nezu's sudden lap course of completely regarding Midoriya's paperwork whenever this has absolutely nothing to do with me. He walked away. The group released Izuku. You're the kid Aizawa expelled who kept coming to classes, right? One of them said. Izuku nodded. They stared at him with awe. He even heard one of them whisper, the boy of legend. But who are you, 2A? Really? One of them who spoke in with a raised head, a girl with heavy eyeliner, with a row of fluffy earrings, spoke up. He expelled all of us last year, then had us re-enrolled. It wasn't a pleasure in the end. It did help us grow. Still pissed me off though. one of the boys said. Has he tried to re-enroll you yet? The girl asked. Izuku shook his head. Not that I know of, the girl frowned. That's weird. Your classmates seem to think you're hero material. No matter. We're all rooting for you. She smiled. She smiled along with her classmates. Anything to help a fellow expellee, said one. And it lets us school with Sir Expels a lot. We hit 2 birds for the price of 1, said one of the boys. It's hit 2 birds with 1 stone, one of the other girls said. Like I said. She turned to Izuku. And that's why he was expelled. Hey! Izuku smiled. Thank you, all of you. And that's how it turned, and that's how it was for a few days. Unfortunately, he had not found alternative schools to go to. Not that he'd really looked. He just hadn't had time, really. He's certain he wasn't dragging his feet or anything. That'd be reckless and irresponsible. Tomorrow was a class trip where avoiding his former homeroom teacher was impossible. He walked down the hall to lunch with Ida and Uraka, considering his 2 opposites. He could just skip the day, or maybe be at school to see if Eraserhead was there for the trip, and skip if he was. Maybe he should ask advice from 2. Uraraka nudged him. He looked up. Eraserhead was list down the hall. Izuku quickly moved to the other side of Uraraka while Shunita tried to block him with their bodies. Would it be good enough? Shota's mind couldn't really help but draw to how frustrating the last few days had been. First of all, Nezu had delayed Midoriya's re-enrollment for almost an entire week. If he didn't do it today, Shota would go to Midoriya himself. All Might attracted those vultures. All Might attracting those vultures. All Might being irresponsible as a teacher, and all of his friends and co-workers acting crazier than normal, and the possible villain break-in when the press entered. If one more thing goes wrong. Ida and Uraraka walked by. He glanced over and gave them a grateful grunt. Then that's when he noticed a green curl sticking up behind them, like a sort of bush. He stopped. They froze. He walked around them to see a very sheepish boy with curly hair looking down, apparently under the impression the others couldn't see him if he couldn't see them. That was funny. He could have sworn he expelled the same kid almost a week ago. Spent the rest of the week trying to bring him back, and now the week's problems were suddenly making a lot more sense now. Ida, Uraraka, get to class. But Sensei, no. He didn't want to see what they did. He He didn't want to see what they did. He grabbed Midoriya and dragged him off. Hisashi entered the teacher's room. Shota had called them right after classes ended for the day, saying it was important. He looked to see if any of them had an idea on what's going on. None of them seemed to. All Might was in his buff form, though. He hoped he didn't have to. It didn't have to do with Midoriya. After all, the little listener had done so well, and he didn't want anything to go wrong. The door slammed open, revealing Shota. And oh shit! What the hell had he done? Behind Shota, wrapped in his capture scarf, was Izuku Midoriya, seemingly beaten within an inch of his life. His clothes were scuffed, torn in multiple places, and his face had a massive bruise over one eye, with one or more of cheek on his forehead, and with one more on his cheek and forehead. He limped into the room behind Shota. I found our infiltrator. What the hell, Shota? Nomura said. Have you lost your mind? Said Ectoplasm. What do you mean he's the infiltrator? Asked All Might, his face grave and serious. This boy was the student on the first day of school until I expelled him. This boy was a student on the first day of school until that I expelled him. You were all notified of the expulsion immediately, and would have prevented him from attending your classes, while the UA barrier would have kept him from returning to UA. For him to be here should be impossible. However, villains broke in the school several days ago. You never found out what they had been doing. The answer is obvious. Midoriya is a spy, and they used the break-in to give him access to the school again. There is no other rational explanation. Unfortunately, he refused to confess when I interrogated him. The little listener wasn't a spy. He's been in class since before the EAP. Hisashi realized what he just said. Shota looked at him with his face expressionless. That's impossible. He was expelled. You wouldn't let a student keep attending classes after they were expelled. Wouldn't you? The teachers all began to find any place to look but Shota. What? Wait. You all knew? But why didn't you tell me? So I would have had to keep pestering Nezu to reinstate him. They all turned to Nezu to glare at him. Nezu gave them a small grin. All Might looked at the teachers. While helping to educate young Midoriya and trying to keep him back in, to get him back in was notable. Hiding from your plans from him, hiding your plans from him. Was this unacceptable? We're just lucky it isn't even worse. Indeed, I overlooked the detail. Shota put his hands behind his back, and Nezu continued, I never imagined you would take such dramatic, irrational, and downright illegal actions. As I apologize for my actions, sir. I'm just glad that, as All Might said, it didn't become. The door slammed open. Where's my baby? A woman shouted, with shoulder-length green hair tied back into a bun, who was obviously Midoriya's mother, burst into the room as soon as she ran to her son, crying, My poor baby, what did they do to you? She wailed. Then she looked at the staff and glared at them. How dare you? I will sue all of you for what you have done and tell everyone and tell everyone in the media, she yells angrily. The staff shudder. Great, Shota, just great. You managed to kill a student, successfully kill your career, and kill the school in the same day. What's next? By the way, I didn't actually attack Midoriya. What? Sure enough, Midoriya wiped the bruises off his face with a wet handkerchief while sporting a bored grin which was shared by his mother. All Might leaped out in front of them. Surprise! Shota glared and pushed him aside. As I was saying, he flashed them with a wide, creepy grin. This was a logical ruse to teach you all the value of honesty and not messing with my teaching duties. But how? Said Nemuri. Simple, said Shota. I caught Midoriya in the hall today with Ida and Uraraka. I knew he hadn't applied to be set in general studies through my efforts to re-enroll him. So I took him aside and he spilled everything. Since you've all been having so much fun letting him stay in your classes without telling me, I decided to have a little fun of my own, and I had called Midoriya, and I had Midoriya call his mother to help. At this, Mrs. Midoriya smiled at them. He asked if I knew how to apply makeup to fake bruises. Luckily, I did. But how did you get him to agree? Hisashi said. The listener is such a shy and sweet. That's where I come in. Young Ida and Uraraka expressed their concern to me, so I went after Aizawa even when I had agreed to his plan. Young Midoriya was still unsure, so I offered him a deal. At this, he signed a T-shirt. Mrs. Midoriya held out his signed to a T-shirt. Mrs. Midoriya held out to him while Shota signed a notebook. And reluctantly, the T-shirt. "You sold us out for a couple autographs?" As the little trader turned to them with a massive grin on his face. "Not just any autographs, but All Might and Eraserheads won on one of my collectible T-shirts, and Eraserheads on his page in my notebook. I would never think I'd ever get Eraserheads. That was all it took to betray us?" Midoriya eagerly nodded. "Now," Mrs. Midoriya turned to Nezu, "you will re-enroll my son immediately and never try this sort of thing again." He wasn't even glaring at Hisashi, but he could still feel it. Honestly, he preferred the idea of fighting villains to this. He was somehow even more relevant than Shota. He was somehow more relieved that Shota hadn't really injured Midoriya. If he had, they'd all be doomed. Of course," Nezu said. Right away." He began typing on his phone. His paws were noticeably shaking. "Thank you," Mrs. Midoriya said, her demeanor innocent and sweet again. "I will be coming tomorrow to discuss this with you further." That was jarring, but still better not be here when she. That was jarring. Still, better not be here when she comes. Not that this hasn't been an entertaining meeting, but I'm taking a nap, Shota says as he closed Midoriya's notebook and handed it back to him. As Midoriya and his mother walked through the door, so Shota said, "I'll have that extra credit input into your grades, as well as whatever the other teachers had planned for you." "Thank you, Sensei," Midoriya said. He and his mother left. Shota walked out to say, After all this excitement, I'm hoping the USJ trip tomorrow goes without any unexpected difficulties." This was more than enough excitement for 1 week. He closed the door. Ectoplasm turned to the teachers. I don't suppose it's a bad time to ask you to all pay up. And that was my first MHA Podfic. As you can tell, I am horrible at voice acting. My throat really hurts. This is my first time doing anything like this. And I hope I did good. I didn't practice reading it earlier. And I also think the writer had has pretty bad grammar. But anyway, I hope to do something like this again, and see you later. Bye.